Hey guys, Sam here with BatchStovez, and it's been raining here this weekend, so it's been kind of hot and muggy, and I couldn't get out and cut grass or do anything, so I spent some time working on doing some more tests on the hybrid remote fed stove. And the final design, this is the final design that I came up with. I sent some prototypes out for testing, and I really want to thank those guys for testing those stoves for me. Changes I made to the stove directly reflect the input that I received from you. So this is what we came up with. As you can see, we changed the design of the legs somewhat, and I like this a little bit better. It gives it a little bit wider support, but also bends in so accommodates narrower pots. I've cut down the nipple a little bit so it doesn't protrude quite so much, and I thinned the pot stand support down some. One of the issues I had was how to connect the nipple, the pot stand and ring, and also the aluminum bottle so that it doesn't leak. And I think I got that figured out. I'm very happy with the way it's working right now. We also came up with a simmer adapter, and this simmer adapter was actually made from the section of the bottle that I cut off, so it was great. I didn't have to have two bottles to make the two pieces. I just used the one bottle, so that's great. The legs fold up just as before, and it's a very pretty compact little design. The total weight on the stove, because we extended the legs, is around 34 and a half, 35 grams. So it's not quite as light as the 29 grams of the prototype, but it performs a lot better, and it works real well for boiling and baking and simmering. So turned out really nice. I'm very satisfied with this. I did some tests on this, so if you would take a look at some of this video. Alright, so I'm out here in the shop. We're testing out the new hybrid stove, and I thought, well, it boils water pretty good. I don't have a problem with that. Been working on some simmering rings. We're going to try this. I think a good test is if it can cook rice, simmer some rice, then it's usually pretty good for doing some dry baking. So I'm going to try to simmer some rice first. Then we're going to try to do some dry baking. But I've got the design pretty much done. I've made a bunch of these rings up, and I've got quite a few of the hybrid bases made, and so I just got to marry the two together, put the nipple in there, and make some legs for these. And I hope to have some of these in the store on the website maybe by the end of the week. It took quite a while, and we made some design changes. The legs initially were just C-shaped, but I ended up having to raise the legs a little bit higher. As you can see, the flame pattern is pretty nice, and this is a good stove because it's compact. Throw in a bug out bag or something like that, or even take on the trail. It's very lightweight. Because of the changes in the pot stand, the weight did increase slightly. I think we're at about 35 grams now, which is still a respectable weight for an aluminum stove. And you can see the pot stand, the design of the pot stand, and I curved them in to accommodate maybe some smaller pots. and I think that's going to work out real well. I've got just a cup of water in here and a half a cup of rice. There's no kind of oil, so we're starting to come up to a boil. And so I'm going to throw this rice in. Give that a stir and let it come back up to a boil. Now rice usually takes about 25 minutes, so I'm going to stick this simmering on and stick it back, the pot back on. Get this lit and turn this timer on. And we'll let it go for about 25 minutes or so. And we'll see where we're at. Okay, we're about 22 minutes in. And I'm going to go ahead and blow the stove out, but I wanted to show you that we're still maintaining, we're still maintaining this simmer state. And it's been like this for the last 22 minutes. I think we've used about maybe 3/4 of an ounce of fuel to bring this to a boil and then maintain the simmer. So it's not too bad. So let's blow this out and we'll let it sit for about 2 or 3 minutes here, and then we will pour it out and see what it looks like. I'm hoping that it didn't scorch any of the bottom. That would be the main goal. See what the top is. Still pretty hot. The steam will get you. And so, see what we got here. Now there was no oil or anything in this. No salt. And I don't see any scorching. I would say that it turned out actually really well, considering. And I don't know if you can see, but nothing's burnt on the bottom of the pot. Turned out really well. A little water and that'll clean right up. And yeah, looks really good. Alright, we're coming up on about 8 minutes. Let me show you what we got. Coffee's looking pretty good. And turn the light out and let you see the flame pattern. That's the simmer mode. Of course, I could raise the height of my feeder a little bit and get a little bit more temp if I need it. You can adjust it with the feeder. But right now I've got it all the way down. On low. And seems to be working alright with this particular situation on my bench here. So it smells good. And it's fairly stable up here. This being a long, narrow, tall pot. It seems to be pretty stable. So far so good. So we'll let this go for about 10 minutes or so, and then we'll see what kind of temperature we maintain. Now I made about 3 or 4 different prototypes, each one was a little different, just to see how each stove reacted. And I did a bunch of boil tests on those, and I also sent those off to 3 individuals who were willing to do a bunch of boil tests and send the feedback to me. Those guys did a great job. I really appreciate it. Scott, Two Bears, and Mark, I really appreciate all the feedback I got from you guys. A few things that we found out with that. I had to change the pot stand and make it a little bit taller. That allowed me not to have so much thermal feedback on the stove, and that allowed it to get down to a lower temp. I was having trouble getting it down to a simmer because there was just too much thermal feedback on the from the bottom of the pot, reflecting back on the heat, reflecting back on the stove and getting the stove too hot. So we got that figured out, and when that happened, I had to redesign the pot stand a little bit. I think it's actually a little bit nicer and it works a little bit better. So we did that. The pot stand, by raising the pot stand and making it a little longer, it did increase the weight a little bit. I think the weight on the new stove is about 34.5, 35 grams, somewhere around in there. Also came up with a simmer ring, and this simmer ring was actually made from the discarded portion of the bottle, which was cool. Normally you'd have to take 2 bottles, maybe use the bottom in order to make this, but I was able to make this with just the discarded portion of the bottle, so no waste on the bottle whatsoever, and worked out really well. Very nice, slips on off pretty easy. Of course, when it gets hot, it's a little harder to get off, so you have to let it cool down a little bit. But that turned out well. Also changed the mounts for the pot stand. Actually made them a little bit thinner to cut down on some weight, and also figured out the way the nipple ties into the stove. I figured out that system so that we don't get any leaks here. That was another concern I had. I got that figured out. So I'll be making a batch of these stoves this week. I think we're pretty much got it where we want it. So I'll be making a batch of those and putting them on the site. You should be able to use this with any remote feeder. You can also use it with just a nipple cap and just fill it by squeezing the bottle, but you're just going to have to keep maintaining it, the heat output, if you use one of those type remotes, but they will work. You can use one of Robbie's fire plugs. They should work, or any kind of feeder. You just may have to, shim it up or adjust it to get the right fuel flow regulated if you don't have an adjustable feeder. But yeah, it should work good. So we're about 197, and we're not boiling, so we could take and let's close this up a little, and well, first let's look and see if the flames died down. I'm sure it's died down a little as the stove cooled off. A little bit maybe. Might be about the same. It's a good size, so when I was dry baking I had to keep it closed off, keep the heat in. So let's just close it off a little bit. We'll let the heat stay in there for a minute, and we'll come back in a few minutes and see if we've raised the temperature any. Okay, so you can see that closing the windscreen up, and we've gotten the temp back up to 203. Took about 3 or 4 minutes to do it. We've been simmering now for 12 minutes. I'm not exactly sure how long the stove will run on 1 ounce. This is a 1 ounce fuel bottle. Let's take a look at the flame here. There you go. Maybe gotten a little hotter since we closed it up. Still working really well. And see, it's just forming a couple little bubbles trying to form on the bottom there. That's about exactly where I want it for cooking rice and soups and doing some dry baking. So you can see from the video, the stove works really well. I cooked all my favorite dishes: rice, coffee, did some dry baking, made some soups. The stove performed really well in all categories, so I'm really pleased with the way it turned out. I think the stove being compact, having the integrated pot stand, it'll be a nice little stove to have in your kit. So if you're interested in one of these stoves, the BS H35 hybrid stove, stop by the website later on this week. I should have them in stock, and check them out. I'm Sam at BatchStovez. Thanks for watching the videos. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Stop by the website and visit at www.BatchStovez.com. Have a great day.